Humans Are Unnerving, Part 4. A story by user ZombieRedditer9188. My eyes focused on the screens where you select your VR equipment, and I walked over to it. I selected a medium human VR suit, gloves, and size 10 shoes, while Reika selected her gear. She seemed to be avoiding my gaze, and I was worried. "Reika, is something wrong?" I asked. What? Of course not. Come on, let's start," she exclaimed as her equipment slid out of the chute next to her screen, neatly folded. "I'm fine," she smiled, but it sounded like she was trying to convince herself more than me. I didn't push the issue any further. I began putting on my own VR equipment, taking a quick glance at Reika. "You ready?" I asked, and she gave me a subtle nod. "All right, let's start." I opened my UI, pressing the start button. Reika and I instantly loaded onto a hill, with sloping valleys and forests as far as our eyes could see, although our area of movement was limited to our room. I quickly bought my weapon, a Pulse SMG. Reika had bought a charge pistol, cheap but still reliable for early waves. "Round 1. The announcer boomed in Universal Galactic 11, and I crouched down, letting a large patch of tall grass hide me. I could hear the clomping of enemy robot soldiers in the distance, and I held my breath, waiting for them to get closer. It had been a while since I had last played, several months to be exact, since I was busy with work and all, and I was eager to see if my skill was as good as before. The enemies were closer now, and I sprang up, firing at them. There were only 2 robots, their mechanical bodies twitching as they got riddled with bullets. I waited for the enemies to get closer, lying flat on the ground, keeping my tail low. I was thankful for my light brown fur for providing some camouflage, although the same couldn't be said for Alan. Speaking of Alan, he was crouched down in some tall grass, facing the opposite direction from me. He had bought a Pulse SMG, using up almost all the credits the game gave you at the start. Was it an impulsive decision, or did he actually have some skill with that thing? I'd have to see. Suddenly, I heard Alan shooting, and I quickly turned around, only for the announcer to speak. "Round 2. I blinked. Alan had taken care of the threat that easily? I turned back around, focusing. There were 10 rounds in total, and on ramp-up, early rounds were nothing. It was in the later rounds that you had to be especially alert. I aimed my charge pistol around before spotting 3 enemies. They had seen me as well, however, and they were faster. I managed to take one out before the other 2 shot me in the shoulder and chest, sending me stumbling back. My VR suit tightened, and I panicked momentarily, taking cover. "Need help?" Alan said from behind me, and I jumped. There was an eerie look of excitement on his face, and I could feel my tail stiffening. "Yeah, I could use some," I squeaked, and Alan took my hand. "Hold on, I'm getting you out of here," he hissed, ducking down as pulse beams whizzed over his head. Alan gently helped me up and sat me down, and I could feel my body getting tingly again. "I got this, I think." Alan rushed over and began firing, finishing off the enemies before the announcer spoke again. "Round 3. Alan rushed back to me, opening his UI. "You might want to buy a better gun now," he said, and moments later Alan pulled out a pulse rifle, buying and putting on several attachments. I fumbled with my own UI and bought a charge rifle, stronger but slower than Alan's pulse rifle. I bought some simple attachments, a silencer and a holoscope. I looked up to see that Alan had fully decked out his gun with a holoscope as well, a reinforced stock, extended plasma magazines, the works. Returning to my original position, I began scanning the woods, waiting for enemies to rush out of them. I spotted one, firing at them. The metallic body fell to the ground with a heavy thud before disintegrating. I could hear Alan shooting repeatedly. More opponents were spawning on his side of the hill. Still, I stayed on my side, trusting Alan to have it under control. More robots rushed out, and I fired slowly at them, and it was a good thing I did. Otherwise, I wouldn't have heard Alan yelling. "Need help, Reika?" he shouted. "I'm fine," I yelled back. Round 4. Robots were rushing out faster now, and I could see some variants among them. Variants on round 4? I realized that the game's difficulty must have increased, because instead of just me, Alan was playing too. "Watch out for the variants!" I yelled before I started shooting, targeting dashers, dangerously fast bots armed with close-range weapons. "It's alright, we got this," Alan yelled back, all the while firing wildly. I smiled before moving on from the dashers to the average variants, the heavy ones slowly lumbering towards me. This was going to be a great game. If you're new here, welcome aboard. Check out the description for the story and join the Discord if you like. Consider supporting the channel and the author as well. It's a dangerous world out there, but remember to be brave and look up to seek the stars.